What's up guys, it's me Jeremy. You guys know that we spend a ton of time on this channel looking back at the history of items, champions, and the game itself. So today I actually wanted to head in the opposite direction and instead look at the future of League of Legends. We're at a really interesting point in time right now with the release of the rune system and the other preseason updates, and we've actually finally reached a state in League of Legends where almost all, if not all, of the majorly outdated issues and long-standing problems of the game have either been completely fixed or at least had some level of solution attempted and implemented by Riot thus far from a few years ago. But that's not to say that there isn't room for improvement, but Riot have made quite a number of promises over the last few years that have definitely followed through on. Major updates are always an exciting time for the player base, so they're going to be the focus of today's video, and we'll be looking for every aspect of the game that either needs updating or maybe that Riot themselves have mentioned they'll be working on over the next 5 years or so. And we're doing this all with the goal of painting a picture of what League of Legends might look like in 5 years from now. So Riot seems to always kind of head into new content or just their overall design process in general with a very big focus on problem solving. So no matter how big or small an update is going to be, they always kind of approach things by considering the problems that might arise, identifying those problems, and then working on a solution. So quite often this seems to end up with them a lot of the time actually seeing problems where there might not necessarily be any, or at least where the players think there aren't any, because they kind of look at things from a very opportunistic perspective. You know, it's not enough for them to find an acceptable place for an update. There's always room for improvement in Riot's eyes and ways to make things better than they already are, which means they often look at things that are probably kind of okay or maybe just fine and actually end up treating them like problems. But this actually allows them to look really deeply into the game and ask themselves what can be done to improve it. And they end up finding a lot of really awesome fixes and improvements that might not otherwise have been considered. So one of the biggest updates that I'm expecting to see in the near future, aside from any more preseason tweaks, is going to be another update to the rune system. So Rioters have commented numerous times that the release version of the rune system is simply just a foundation that they're building upon, and the next runes update has been confirmed to include a ton of new runes, so it seems like Riot will be aiming to add a lot more variety into the current existing system. So one of the big goals of the update was to avoid generalization. So they don't want one or maybe two specific rune pages to be used in every situation or on every champion in a certain role or something like that. Instead, they want a very simple, customizable system where players feel like any choice they make is both useful and also beneficial for their own personal playstyles. So adding new runes will definitely help them keep things specialized, and we're expecting to see a few tweaks and other balance changes to the current runes alongside this update as well. So Riot have commented that actually a big part of this follow-up update will be to see if any particular set of champions that share certain traits are not being well supported by the update. So if that proves to be true, they can simply add a specific keystone for use by that specific champion type, and it should solve the issue for most of them, hopefully. So the next major update I'm really expecting to see after the rune follow-up update is actually a set of changes planned for starting items. So Riot have actually talked quite a bit about adding new starting items during the preseason update in combination with the previous release of Runes Reforged, but they later canceled that plan, instead focusing on all development on the runes themselves. The removal of the old runes and mastery system meant that Riot not only needed to spend a lot of time perfecting the runes they wanted ready for release, but it also meant changes had to be made to champion base stats to complement this new rune system. As a result, there simply just wasn't enough time to develop and balance new starting items with all these other changes. Still though, there's a lot of work to be done when it comes to improving starting items and offering more variety. So Riot planned to work on these and release them sometime in the next year. So one example that Riot originally posted that from their canceled starting items was Doran's Dagger, which was a theoretical new starting item that would give you 12% attack speed, 60 health, 2 life on hit, and 5 bonus damage to minions for only 450 gold, and it would essentially act as an early game item for attack speed focused characters without forcing them to take the conventional dagger and lose out on the health, sustain, and minion damage as well. And we'll expect to see this probably in the update because I think it's definitely a great one, possibly with a few tweaks though, alongside a bunch of other starting items that will hopefully offer every champion in the game an interesting item choice to start the game with. So we've mentioned a couple times now that Riot have reached a point where they have updated almost all of the major systems left in League of Legends. One of the remaining ones is actually something that the vast majority of League players probably don't ever really think about because it doesn't apply to them, and that's the beginner experience. So whether you've been around for one season or for all of them, there's not really any reason for you personally to touch the new player features, since likely if you're watching this video, you're already comfortable with the game, you're already comfortable with the client, and have a very reasonable understanding of everything necessary. But that's just not the case for new players, and Riot are constantly trying to entice new people to try the game. Now, they do like to focus on appealing to the existing player base over doing things for new players, but overall it's still super important for them to craft a strong new player experience, and it's likely something that they will be focusing on in the future. Now, that might not be all that interesting or exciting for a lot of people, but if you've ever made a new account to play with one of your friends that has just started playing League of Legends, you'd know for sure that the current system, well, let's just say it leaves a lot to be desired. The introduction of the new rune system and new leveling reward system is actually fantastic for new players. It means that they're actually on a level playing field from day one, as opposed to before, and they can quickly start building up a small pool of champions to play. However, the current tutorial is honestly just quite a massive joke. I guess it does kind of teach players the very basics in a guided game, but there's tons of improvements that Riot could make. I mean, they still make you buy Thornmail on Ashe. Like, seriously? So in addition to changing the in-game tutorial, Riot could also do more to help guide newer players around the client, around just the game itself, and help them get comfortable with all of the different super complicated interfaces that are being introduced now. Another part of the game that has been a little bit neglected until now is actually the lore. So some players only really care about the lore of maybe their favorite characters, and maybe some of you guys don't really care about the lore whatsoever, but there's tons of players out there that really do enjoy diving into the lore of their favorite games. I definitely would put myself into that category, which means understanding the backgrounds of the characters, how they interact with each other, the different areas of the worlds and all that stuff. So prior to Riot's new standard for champion releases, lore was something that was kind of just completely neglected, and it resulted in a lot of characters being added to the game that, well, had a pretty much no lore attached, or they had this classic sort of dark and mysterious past kind of thing that Riot used as a cop-out to design a backstory for a ton of characters. Now, to give them credit, a ton of the visual gameplay updates with Riot that they've released have had really fleshed out character origin stories, and Riot seems to be making a pretty big effort already to tie everything together into one believable universe, and they're posting tons of content on their universe website actually. So actually all that's really left for them to do with the lore, apart from finishing the things they're already working on, is to implement the lore into the client. If they really want to turn League of Legends into a franchise with multiple games, which they are trying to do already, the lore is going to be a really crucial part of that. So weaving it into the client, into the actual game itself, as opposed to just some random website that you're only really going to find if you know about it. They just need to make it more accessible for everyone. That's going to be a great step, and I would expect to see an update like this sometime in the next couple of years or so. So the last large-scale update on the agenda for League of Legends, I would say, are changes to the user interface and user experience. So the client is definitely not as stable as it could be, and Riot are always chasing perfection when it comes to the in-game UI. So a good example of this are the already released health bar changes. So Riot want to make it easier for players to use health bars, maybe as visual indicators, so that they can better keep track of things in a fight, gain more clarity when spectating the game, and make the gameplay more intuitive when it comes to playing around important mechanics. They've also promised to keep things similar to the older system so that it does feel familiar, so players won't need to relearn how to time their last hits, but it'll also feel way more satisfying when you do certain things, like maybe blowing someone up with a ton of burst damage. Players are definitely going to be referencing the various UI systems on both the client and in-game whenever they play League, so it's a really high priority for Riot to make sure all these systems work well, feel good to use, and give as much useful information as possible without directly throwing it at the screen in text form. And actually, the health bar thing is a great step in the right direction, although it does still need some minor improvements. So from Riot Ghostcrawler's comments on League of Legends' long-term strategy and Riot's approach to development in general, it seems like they actually really want to turn League of Legends into a franchise with the same kind of longevity as games like Magic the Gathering, Dungeons & Dragons, a great long history for the future. And although a lot of players maybe enjoyed these older games for nostalgic purposes, there's not really many online games that can hold on to a substantial player base. The player base League has 100 million players for that length of time. There's simply just so much competition for other games that it can be really hard to keep players coming back. Now, historically, Riot have definitely focused on sustaining their already existing player base and keeping them happy, but it does seem that they want to focus a little more than they have before on enticing new players to join. It's going to be really exciting to see what Riot comes up with in the future in order to make that a reality. Although development on League of Legends itself is important, pushing it as a franchise and developing new games in the same universe might be a really promising way for Riot to accomplish it. And Riot Ghostcrawler himself actually puts it at best. He personally describes it as, in 5 years, League of Legends is maybe going to look about the same, but Riot will instead have multiple games released, and I'll be the one stuck deciding on which Riot game I want to play on any given night. Anyway, that's just about going to wrap it up for the video. Hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, please leave a like. Let me know what you guys think might happen to League of Legends within the next 5 years from now. Hopefully they'll do some other things like fix death recap and a whole bunch of minor tweaks and changes, of course, loads of new champions, skins, items, everything else as well. Let me know what you think. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.